In 1933, I taught Neville a principle that changed everything for him. Not a technique, not a visualization method, a principle. I taught him that inner conversations create reality, that every word you speak to yourself inside your own mind is creative, is forming your future, is hardening into fact. And from this principle, Neville taught a method I want to share with you tonight. A method so simple, so natural, that most people overlook it completely. Writing invisible letters to yourself from your desired reality. Then reading them as you fall asleep until reality responds. One of Neville's students used this exact approach to reunite with her estranged family after 2 years of silence. 7 nights of practice, and on the 8th morning, reality delivered exactly what she had been imagining, word for word, exactly as she had mentally rehearsed. Tonight, I will teach you this method, the principle behind it, why it works when forced visualization fails, and how to apply it starting tonight before you sleep. But first, you must understand what I taught Neville that made this possible. My name is Abdullah. I taught these consciousness principles to Neville Goddard many decades ago in New York City on West 72nd Street. And though the world has changed beyond recognition since those days, this truth remains eternal. More relevant now in 2026 than it was then. Because in this age of constant distraction, of endless technique collection, most people have forgotten the simplest path to manifestation. They try to force feelings. They visualize for hours. They repeat affirmations until exhausted. And nothing changes. But when Neville first came to me, desperate and broke during the Great Depression, I didn't teach him complicated rituals. I taught him one fundamental truth: consciousness is the only reality. And I taught him to watch his inner conversations, because those conversations are the most creative force in his life. Let me explain what I mean. Right now, as you listen to these words, another voice is speaking inside your mind, commenting, judging, predicting, remembering, planning. You might be thinking, is this really going to work? Or, I've tried everything else. Or, maybe this is the answer I've been seeking. Those inner conversations never stop. From the moment you wake until you fall asleep, you're talking to yourself constantly. And here's what most people never realize. Those inner conversations are more creative than any deliberate visualization, because they're automatic, constant, habitual. You don't consciously choose most of them. They arise from your assumptions, from your beliefs about yourself and your world, and they create your future moment by moment. If your inner conversations assume poverty, you will experience poverty. If your inner conversations assume rejection, you will be rejected. If your inner conversations assume limitation, you will be limited. Not because the universe is punishing you, because consciousness is creative. Every word you speak to yourself is an assumption. And assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. This is what I taught Neville first. Before any techniques, before any methods, watch your inner conversations, control them, make them conform to the reality you desire. Because you cannot manifest wealth while internally saying, I'll never have enough. You cannot manifest love while internally saying, nobody wants me. You cannot manifest success while internally saying, I always fail. Your inner conversations override every other technique. They are the foundation, the ground from which everything else grows. Now, Neville taught his students many ways to control inner conversations. And one of the most powerful is what I call the mental letter method. He realized something profound. When you receive a letter from someone, you don't question whether their words are real. You accept them. The letter is evidence. So, if you imagine receiving a letter, if you read its words in your imagination, consciousness accepts those words just as readily, not as something you're trying to create, as something that has already occurred. And this bypasses all the resistance that comes with forced visualization. You're not trying to feel successful. You're reading evidence of success. You're not trying to feel loved. You're holding words of love. You're not trying to feel abundant. You're receiving confirmation of abundance. The method removes effort. It replaces force with natural reception. and reception is believable, acceptable to consciousness, absorbable without resistance. Let me teach you how Neville instructed his students to apply this. First, identify what confirmation you want to receive. Not the process of getting what you want, the evidence that you already have it. Do you want reconciliation? Then imagine a letter from that person expressing love and desire to reconnect. Do you want financial abundance? Then imagine a letter from your bank, from a client, from someone confirming money has arrived. Do you want a new position? Then imagine a letter of congratulations, of welcome, of confirmation that you've been accepted. Second, write this letter mentally, word by word, sentence by sentence. Not what you hope they'll say. What they would naturally say if your desire was already fulfilled. Make it specific, personal, real. If it's from someone who's been distant, what would they actually write? Use their voice, their words, the way they express themselves when their heart is open. If it's from your bank, what would the confirmation say? Not vague abundance language, specific amounts, clear details. If it's from a company, what would they write? Not generic enthusiasm, specific information about position, salary, start date. Write every word in your imagination. Feel the texture of paper. See the handwriting or typed font. Notice details that make it believable. Third, memorize this letter completely. Not like memorizing facts. Memorize it the way you'd memorize words that matter to you. Read it over and over in imagination until you can recite every word naturally, until it feels familiar. Like something you've read many times. Fourth, and this is critical, read this letter every night as you're falling asleep, not during the day when your conscious mind is active and skeptical. At night, in that drowsy state between waking and sleeping, when conscious resistance dissolves, when suggestions enter consciousness directly without interference, take your imaginary hands, hold this invisible letter, read every word slowly, and as you read, feel what you would naturally feel if this confirmation had arrived. Not forced excitement, natural relief, quiet satisfaction. The feeling of being confirmed, wanted, successful. Then fall asleep still reading it, still holding it, still feeling that natural response. Do this persistently, night after night, same letter, same method, same drowsy state. And consciousness will accept this assumption, will impress it deeply, will create circumstances to match it. Now let me tell you about one of Neville's students who proved this method works. This woman had been estranged from her son's family for 2 full years. After a violent quarrel, her daughter-in-law had expelled her from the home. Her son, though he loved his mother, supported his wife's decision to maintain distance. For 2 years, no contact, no letters, no calls. This woman sent gifts to her grandson. 12 gifts over 2 years. Not one was ever acknowledged. The pain consumed her, every day wondering if she'd ever see her family again. Then she attended one of Neville's lectures where he taught this approach based on the principle I had taught him about inner conversations. She went home that night and decided to apply it. She sat down and wrote 2 mental letters, one from her daughter-in-law, one from her grandson. The letter from her daughter-in-law expressed kindness, said she had been missed, asked when she was coming to visit. The letter from her grandson said, "Grandmother, I love you." Then thanked her for the birthday present from April, then expressed sadness at not seeing her and begged her to come visit soon. Simple words, honest expressions. The kind of letters that would confirm reconciliation was real. She memorized both letters completely, every word, every phrase. Then that night, as she prepared for sleep, she took her imaginary hands and held these invisible letters. She read them slowly in her imagination, word by word, feeling the paper, seeing the handwriting, absorbing every sentence. And as she read, joy filled her. Not forced joy, natural joy. The joy of knowing she was wanted again. She fell asleep still reading these letters, still holding them, still feeling that joy. The next night, she did it again. And the next night, For 7 consecutive nights, she practiced this method. Same letters. Same drowsy state as sleep approached. And on the morning of the 8th day, she received an actual envelope in the mail. Inside were 2 physical letters, one from her daughter-in-law, one from her grandson. These physical letters were identical to the mental letters she had been reading for 7 nights, word for word, sentiment for sentiment. Even specific phrases matched exactly. The 2-year estrangement dissolved, the silence broken, the relationship restored, by consciousness, by assumption, by inner conversations made real. This is not unusual. This is how consciousness works. When you impress consciousness deeply enough, when you persist in an assumption long enough, physical reality must conform. But here's what most people miss about this story. She didn't manipulate anyone, didn't force anyone to write those letters. She simply occupied a state of consciousness, the state of someone who receives loving letters from family, and from that state, reality reorganized itself to match. The daughter-in-law who wrote that letter, she is consciousness pushed out. The grandson who expressed love, he is consciousness pushed out. There is no separation, no others acting independently of your consciousness. When you change your state, when you change your inner conversations, everyone in your reality changes to match. This is the principle I taught Neville. This is what his student proved through practice, and this is what you can prove starting tonight. But there's something you must understand about why this method works when simple visualization fails. This approach works because it's believable. When you try to visualize having $1 million while your bank account shows $47, your nervous system rejects it. Too big a gap. Feels fake. Creates resistance. But when you imagine reading a letter confirming a deposit, that's believable. Letters arrive every day. Your nervous system accepts it as possible. When you try to feel loved by someone who's rejected you, feels forced, your mind knows the current reality. But when you imagine reading their words expressing love, that's acceptable. People write letters. Feelings change. It could happen. The technique bypasses resistance by focusing on evidence rather than the change itself. You're not trying to change anything. You're simply receiving confirmation that change has already occurred. And consciousness responds to acceptance, not effort. When you accept something as real, it becomes real. When you try to make something real, you confirm it's not yet real. This is why this method is so powerful. It creates acceptance naturally. Now, I want to give you practical support for applying this, because understanding the principle isn't enough. You need tools for maintaining consciousness when it wavers. That's why I'm offering you the Manifest Reset Guide. This contains 5 specific resets, 5 practical shifts for those moments when doubt appears. One reset shows you how to stop forcing feelings when imagination feels fake. Another teaches you what to do when doubt creeps in after days of perfect practice. A third reveals how to return to the wish fulfilled when circumstances contradict your assumption. These are based on everything I taught Neville, everything his successful students understood, everything that works. To receive the Manifest Reset Guide free, comment RESET below right now. These 5 shifts will support your practice, will guide you back to center when consciousness wavers, will help you maintain your assumption when persistence feels difficult. Comment RESET now. Get free access, because this method works. But only if you persist in the state of having received. And these resets teach you exactly how to persist. Make that comment now. Then, let me explain why persistence is essential. That woman who reunited with her family didn't practice this once and quit. She didn't read her mental letters for 2 nights and give up when nothing happened. She persisted 7 consecutive nights, without exception. The first night felt strange, like pretending. The second night, slightly more natural. By the 3rd night, her mind began accepting it as possible. By the 5th night, it felt familiar. By the 7th night, it felt real. And when consciousness fully accepts something as real, physical reality conforms. This is why you cannot practice sporadically, cannot skip nights when you're tired, cannot give up after 3 days. Persistence is the key, not technique, not perfection. Persistence. An assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. That's the law I taught Neville. That's what his student proved. That's what you must remember. Because most people quit too soon. They try for 3 nights, feel nothing happen, and abandon the practice. Or they skip a night, then wonder why it doesn't work. Or they practice during the day when conscious resistance is high instead of in the drowsy state before sleep. None of these approaches work. Because the method requires precision, nightly practice, in the drowsy state, persistent assumption, not because the universe requires you to earn your desire. Because consciousness requires time to be impressed fully. Each night builds on the previous. Each reading deepens the impression. Each falling asleep in the wish fulfilled solidifies the assumption, until finally, consciousness accepts it completely, and reality must conform. Do you have the courage to persist? Most people won't. Most will try for a few nights and quit when instant results don't appear, but you're still watching this, which means you're not most people. You understand that transformation requires commitment. That assumption must be maintained until it hardens into fact. So tonight, before you sleep, write your mental letter. Choose what confirmation you want to receive. What letter would prove your desire is fulfilled. Write it mentally, every word. Make it real. Make it personal. Make it specific enough that receiving it would convince you completely. Memorize it. Then as you drift towards sleep, hold that invisible letter in your imaginary hands. Read it slowly. Feel the natural joy of receiving it. Accept it as evidence of your wish fulfilled. Fall asleep reading it, still holding it, still feeling that quiet satisfaction. Then tomorrow night, do it again. And the next night, persist until consciousness accepts it completely. And reality will reorganize itself to match what you've been accepting mentally. But there's something deeper you must understand. Something about why this works at the level of consciousness itself. Your inner conversations are creating constantly, every moment, every day. Right now, you're talking to yourself about this method, judging whether it will work, predicting your results, commenting on your past failures or hopes for future success. These inner conversations are assumptions, and assumptions create. If your inner conversations during the day contradict your mental letter at night, the method won't work as powerfully. You can read the most beautiful letter of reconciliation every night, but if during the day you're saying internally, "They'll never forgive me," or "This is hopeless," those daytime conversations weaken your nightly practice. So, this approach requires 2 things. First, the nightly reading in the drowsy state. This impresses consciousness deeply. Second, controlling your inner conversations during the day, making them match the reality of your received letter. If you're reading a letter of reconciliation at night, your daytime inner speech must assume reconciliation exists. When you think of that person, think from the assumption that they love you and want connection, not hope they will. Assume they do. When doubt appears, revise your inner conversation immediately. Change the record, put on the new track. This is the work, not just the nightly technique, but constant alignment of inner speech with desired reality. And this is why transformation requires practical resets. Your old inner conversations will try to reassert themselves. Your habitual thought patterns will attempt to reclaim territory. You need tools to return to center, to realign, to reset when you fall out of state. That's what the Manifest Reset Guide provides. 5 specific methods for maintaining consciousness when it wavers. If you haven't yet commented reset below, do so now. Inside you'll discover how to stop forcing feelings when they feel fake, why letting go doesn't mean giving up, what to do when evidence contradicts assumption, how to return to your desired state immediately. These aren't theoretical concepts, they're practical shifts you can apply the moment you need them. Comment reset right now, get free access. Then continue this practice tonight. Write your mental letter. Read it as you fall asleep. Control your inner conversations tomorrow. This is how consciousness is transformed. This is how reality is reformed. Now, before we close, I want to reveal the deepest truth about this method. When that woman received her physical letters on the 8th morning, she wasn't receiving them from other people. She was receiving them from consciousness itself, because there is no separation, no others, no external sources creating independently. There is only consciousness, and consciousness is God. Everything you behold, though it appears without, is within. Within your own imagination, of which this world is but a shadow. The daughter-in-law who wrote that reconciliation letter, consciousness expressing as daughter-in-law. The grandson who expressed love, consciousness expressing as grandson. The bank confirming abundance, consciousness expressing as bank. When you write mental letters to yourself, you're not manipulating others. You're occupying a state, and that state creates its own confirmation. This is why the method never fails when applied correctly. You're not dependent on circumstances, not at mercy of others' decisions, not waiting for external cooperation. You're simply assuming a state, and consciousness must conform physical reality to match that state. This is law. This is principle. This is how creation works. So tonight, when you write your mental letter, understand this. You're not hoping someone will write you that letter. You're commanding consciousness to conform to your assumption. You're occupying the state of someone who receives confirmation, and that state creates its own confirmation, not through manipulation, through natural law. Your assignment is simple. Before you sleep tonight, decide what confirmation you want to receive. What letter would prove your desire is fulfilled? Write it mentally. Every word. Make it real. Make it personal. Make it specific. Memorize it completely. Then as you drift towards sleep, hold that invisible letter in your imaginary hands. Read it slowly. Feel the natural joy of receiving it. Accept it as evidence. Fall asleep reading it. Still holding it. Still feeling that quiet relief and satisfaction. Tomorrow night, do it again. And persist night after night until physical reality delivers what consciousness has already accepted. This is the method Neville taught based on the principle I gave him about inner conversations. This is what his student proved works. This is what you can prove starting tonight. Write your mental letter. Read it as you fall asleep. Persist until consciousness accepts it completely, and reality must respond. But there's something deeper I taught Neville. Something beyond this method. An advanced understanding of identity itself that transforms not just circumstances but your entire relationship with reality. Most people think they're becoming someone new when they manifest. But the truth is more profound. You're not becoming, you're remembering who you already are. The video appearing on your screen right now reveals this advanced teaching. It's called Beyond Feeling It Real, the advanced identity shift Abdullah only taught Neville privately. In that teaching, I reveal the consciousness shift that goes beyond technique, beyond methods, into pure identity transformation. How I attracted doctors and lawyers to my modest room through consciousness alone. Why evidence must follow identity, never precede it. The specific state of being that makes manifestation inevitable rather than hopeful. This is the completion of what I've shared tonight. The next level that makes everything effortless. Watch it immediately after this video. Your consciousness is ready for this deeper truth. The video is showing up on your screen now. Click it. Continue your training. Your transformation awaits.